In this week's gospel, Jesus calls himself our Good Shepherd. And so we call this Good Shepherd Sunday. And he makes this big deal out of how his sheep know his voice and they'll follow him, and they won't follow these other shepherds who aren't willing to lay down their lives for the sheep because they're just hired helpers and all this kind of stuff. Right? This big deal about how the sheep recognize the voice of their shepherd. This isn't just a cute image for kids or a cute image that Jesus used because sheep are fluffy and nice, and it'd be a great image for thousands of years down the road. He used this illustration because sheep are a very good illustration of what we are supposed to be. They're followers, right? Sheep will follow their leader and they'll do whatever the leader does. If the leader walks off a cliff, they'll all follow. But sheep also recognize the voice of their shepherd. Real, actual sheep out in a flock somewhere will respond to their shepherd's voice and not to somebody else's voice. Sheep are actually very skittish creatures. If they don't know you and don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. And so there's a lesson for us in that, right? The sheep know the voice of the shepherd, which begs the question for us: do we recognize the voice of Jesus, or do we have a hard time figuring out in our lives what is the voice of Jesus? How do we get to know that voice of the shepherd? Kids, think about this. Have you ever been in a crowded place and you could hear your parents' voice calling to you? Or parents, have you ever been in a place and you hear your kid call out to you or cry out for help or something like that, and you recognize their voice amidst the voices of the others? What is that? How does that happen? What's the heart of that phenomenon? You're used to each other's voices. You hear each other's voices all the time in casual conversation, in corrective discipline, in pouring your heart out about your day. You're used to hearing the voice and the timbre and the tone and the inflection, and you recognize it. We need to be like that with Jesus. How do we get to be so comfortable with the voice of Jesus that we could recognize it in a crowd of voices telling us what's important and what's not important, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and all that sort of stuff? We listen to his voice often with regularity. Right? What does that look like? That looks like reading the Bible with some regularity, going to Mass, which is a lot of reading the Bible to us. Jesus' voice is the voice that speaks through the Scriptures, and so the more familiar we are with the Scriptures, the more familiar we are with the voice of Jesus. We hear the voice of Jesus in prayer, or we get used to that voice in prayer. It's not an audible voice most of the time. Maybe it is for you, it's not for me. You don't usually hear a voice out loud, but the more you sit with the Lord, you get to recognize and get comfortable with the things that he says, the way that he communicates, the feelings that he might give you in prayer when he's talking to you, and things like that. So reading Scripture, going to Mass, praying, and talking about faith as a family especially is an important one. When we do all those things, we get so used to the voice of our shepherd that we could recognize it anywhere, no matter what noise is going on around us, and then we're really followers of that good shepherd.